You know, for how much I joke about ripping up track, it's your guys' fault for not having an intervention yet. Ay, ay, ay. Hey everybody, welcome back to the layout. So we'll get into what you saw in that teaser to start the video here really soon, but before we do, I just wanted to show you guys the update on everything that happened in the last layout update. Pretty much all the track is now down here as intended in Canandaigua. It's been through a single shakedown session and everything went pretty well. There was a couple of little modifications that I made after the fact just to make sure that things ended up running smoother, but overall I'm pretty happy with it. But I'll just kind of take you guys through everything that we're looking at over here, so just so that you can get an idea of what everything is. So off to the left here, these are the primary unloading tracks for Pactiv. On those unloading tracks, they primarily unload plastic pellets, but there is also a tank car spot for any of the chemicals that are used in the injection molding process. And then off to your right over here, this is the warehouse track here. This is where they would unload different types of plastic pellets and also talc, which is used in the injection molding process. So that track is actually going to be 2 car spots inside of a building. I've still got to mock up the building, which I'll do at some point soon, I'm sure. But it'll be interesting to kind of have a couple of spots inside here, make operations just a little bit of a challenge because you're not sure exactly what's in there until you pull them out, which should be fun. And then as we spin around to the right hand side, you'll see the storage tracks. There's 2 storage tracks here, and I learned from my buddies with the Finger Lakes that they have 2 very literal names for these storage tracks. They call this front track the short track, and the back track is the long track, because just like in real life, we've got one track that is actually shorter than the other. In real life, it's actually significantly shorter than the other one, but obviously due to some selective compression on the layout, it's not quite as dramatic as it is on the real thing. But pretty interesting. The way operations work here is GC2's basically going to be bringing in fresh cars for the storage track. There's usually 9 times out of 10 a surplus of cars at Pactiv, so operators will likely be pulling cars off of the storage tracks to go over to the unloading tracks. The warehouse track is interesting because anything that needs to go into the warehouse, there's such a long lead there that if there's surplus, they actually leave them on the lead. So a lot of really interesting operating opportunities here that I'll be able to explore over the years to come, and I'm really looking forward to getting into that for sure. So those of you who have been watching my videos for a while might notice that there's something pretty different over here in Penn Yan, and that's that the freight house back here is actually no longer just a plain Jane Walther's kit. You'll remember that I mentioned I had a shakedown session a couple of weeks ago where I ran Canandaigua for the first time during an op session. Well, my good buddy Joey from Late Night Hobbies came to that session, and he came bearing some gifts. The first of which was this absolutely stunning representation of the old Pennsylvania Railroad freight house that sits in Penn Yan. I had the good fortune of going out to help Joey very briefly with the measurements of this building. I threw the drone up and got him some overhead shots of the building and then the additions that are next to the building as well for his reference. And as a thank you, he built me fully this absolutely stunning rendition of the freight house. This is a scale version of it. I'm super excited to have it. I'll be sure to throw some additional photos up here of it so that you can see all angles, but it is absolutely gorgeous, and quite frankly, my scenery around it is not doing it justice. So this could be an area where we spend some time focusing on scenery here coming soon for sure. But with those two things out of the way, let's hop on over to the Himrod side of the layout where you saw that teaser and talk about what's going on over there. Well, as one of my favorite bands, Bowling for Soup, once said, there's nothing wrong with Ohio, except the snow and the rain. But all the same, I don't really want my layout, which is set in the Finger Lakes region of New York, to look as flat as central and northeast Ohio. And up until now, the only place that really looked like the Finger Lakes region was the Seneca Lake scene. So part of what we're doing over here now in Himrod is trying to better match the topography of the Finger Lakes region, and specifically Himrod itself. You see, Himrod Yard is actually set on the side of a hill, and the flat benchwork that I had here previously just really was not doing it justice. So as you saw in that time lapse, we've taken some measures to correct that. And correct it we certainly have. I recorded that last scene that you saw actually right after the shakedown session where Joey left me with that gorgeous Penyan freight house. And we've actually been working on this scene now for a couple of weeks, and it's pretty well done. So I'm going to do something a little bit different than I normally would in these layout updates, and I'm going to kind of just take you through the process of what I've done to get the scene to the point where it is today. So the first thing I did after impulsively cutting a chunk out of my layout is just kind of started to do a little bit of research on the prototype. I've rail fanned this line a couple of times, I think probably 3 or 4 total, 2 of which were somewhat in the time frame in which I hope to model. So I've got some great reference shots that I definitely am going to use. But I also wanted to try to get a better idea of, what typically goes on in this area, more specifically, like what sort of crops are they growing in this area. There is a ton of Amish or Mennonite families that live in this area, and a lot of the agriculture that goes on in this part of the state of New York is significantly influenced by them. So in that 2013 to 2015 timeframe, honestly, not a lot has ultimately changed from then till today. The fields around Himrod are all growing hay and corn. I was curious to know if maybe there was some soybeans mixed in there, but it doesn't look like there was. So I knew what crops I needed to have in my fields. I got an idea of, what sort of water was kind of running from the left side of the screen here, which is uphill down towards the lake. And you can see there's a lot of little tributaries in these hedgerows that are water draining down to the lakes, and I wanted to make sure that I included those as well. And then I went to my prototype pictures and got an idea of what things would be looking like in the time frame in which I'm modeling, which is the 2013 to 2015, late October, early November, kind of in that Halloween first week of November time frame. I noticed a couple of key things. One is that as far as trees are concerned, it's definitely late fall. They're starting to lose their leaves. I went and checked leaf reports for 2015 specifically and found out that in that late October timeframe is when color was basically past peak and leaves were starting to fall in the week that I'm modeling. So the photos that I have are a little bit slightly later in the season than I'm really hoping to utilize. So I've got to kind of make those work. But there's some important things in there that I can still learn. Like even though the trees are bare and brown and all of the colors are muted, as you get closer to the ground, a lot of the brush kind of turns color later. So that will come into play as we keep going forward. So with research out of the way, it was time to actually get going on some of the progress that needed to be made on the layout. I first started by kind of planning out where I wanted things to go and then putting down my fields. This was a new technique for me. It's nothing I've ever seen done before, honestly. But I wanted to try to figure out a way to get some really nicely plowed looking fields onto the layout. I started with a little test piece and laid out some brown sanded tile grout. And once that was down, and this is going to sound really strange, but I found that the best thing to get good looking, evenly spaced rows into a field was actually to use the guard off of an old beard trimmer that I had laying around. It's funny what you use as a modeler to get good looking results, but this ended up looking really, really good. And once I had that plowed field look down, I decided, well, let's see what it's going to look like if we attempt to put a hayfield in on top of it. So I got my little test chunk of foam and started sprinkling on some static grass. And I gotta say, I was thoroughly impressed with the results. I can't believe how nicely that test piece turned out, and decided for sure that needed to go on the layout itself. So it took me a couple of tries to get it right on the layout, but ultimately ended up being really, really happy with how it turned out on the layout. You can actually, if you catch the right angle, see the nice even rows of hay in the hay field. And then the second of the two fields is just going to be a bare field being plowed. I was hoping prior to this layout update, I was going to have a nice order from Mini Prints in, because I've got some really fun plans for the second field too, even though it's going to be bare. But maybe I'll have to follow up on that once I've got my order in, and we can discuss that at a later date. So with the fields now situated, it was time to really start to dive deep into scenery itself. There was a bunch of things that needed to be done. Lots of trees needed to be made, lots of shrubbery needed to be made. I found a couple of great tutorials online going over how to make shrubbery out of cocoa husks, out of rope material, and out of polyfill, and worked on a bunch of those on some Talkin' Trains live streams on Monday nights. Be sure to tune into those if you're interested. They're at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time pretty much every Monday. As I was working on the shrubbery project, though, I also was working on the scenery itself on the layout. Lots of static grass needed to go in, lots of rock for the runoffs, draining water down the hill and into Seneca Lake, and some water in those creeks as well, which turned out really good using just a little bit of GAC 500. Installed a couple of culvert pipes underneath the roads. Those are 3D prints by, I believe, Iowa Scaled Engineering. Really happy with how those are looking in the scene. As we work our way south in the scene, though, you'll notice this kind of wooded area that's under construction. Unfortunately, I don't have enough super trees on hand to finish that for the time being, but we'll get that done as soon as I can get my hands on some more seafoam plant. But just to the south of those trees is a road, and that road is called Stone Jug Road in real life. And a couple of the pictures that I showed you earlier are actually taken from that road. So I really wanted to do as good of a job as possible recreating that scene. It's a really cool little tree tunnel which kind of peeks back into Himrod Yard, the spot in real life where you can kind of just wait for train HW2 to be done building its train before heading south to Watkins Glen. And it's just a really cool vibe that I wanted to try to recreate as best I could. The scenery process itself did go relatively smoothly, but the whole time it kind of felt like something was missing. I shared pictures with friends. They all gave me really positive feedback. But the whole time in the back of my head, being my own worst critic, I still could not shake the feeling that something was missing. I worked on refining my bushes, got better with those, made them more detailed, redid some of the coloring of the static grass, reworked the laneway for the farming equipment, lots of things, but still couldn't quite figure it out. And then as I was looking at my reference photos one more time, it kind of hit me. I really was using the wrong colored static grass. I was using kind of a yellow, dead colored static grass. And even in early November, the grass is still relatively green in that area, which was not something that I had really paid much attention to previously. But I took the opportunity to stack a couple of layers of static grass to really make it look overgrown, put in some greens along with a little bit of dead yellow grass, and that was the ticket. That's exactly what I was missing. So from there, it was just a matter of finishing everything up, and, well, I think that's enough of me talking. Let's finally just take a step back, sit back, and enjoy rail fanning the scene and enjoying what's become the somewhat finished product. And there you have it, everybody. The new and improved Himrod. It's pretty crazy to watch this go from what it was at the beginning of the video, just a big chunk taken out of the layout, to where it stands today. I'm pretty happy with how things are looking. There's a few things that I still need to do before I can consider this done. I still want to do a little bit of rework to the shrubbery on the back side of the layout. I also need to do a ton more trees for that forested area next to Stone Jug Road. And of course, there's a bunch of little detail to add as well. If you enjoyed today's video and you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button because there's plenty more content to come right here in Himrod Yard, along with the rest of the layout as well, as we make a big push towards getting everything ready for the 2028 National NMRA Convention. Be sure to hit the like button down below and let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one.